So welcome everyone. My name is Maya at Career Services, and I am here with another career Q&A. And here we are meeting with Yanira. I'm going to have her introduce herself. But again, this is an opportunity for our UCSB students to meet with professionals who are in occupations that maybe you've never even thought about or really would like to know more about. So without further ado, Yanira, I would like you to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what we should know about you.
Perfect. Well, hello everyone. My name is Yanira. I'm a PhD student at UCSB, but I'm also a teaching associate at UCSB, and I also teach at Santa Monica College here in Santa Monica, California. I'm originally from El Salvador, but I grew up in South LA, formerly South Central Los Angeles.
Thank you. It sounds like you've had a couple occupations throughout your life, and I want students to know that that is something that they should all expect to do as well. Can you walk us through some of the specific professions that you've had or positions that you've had that support immigrant communities specifically?
So actually, my first job fresh out of college, so when I graduated from undergrad, I did my major in international studies and Spanish, and I actually took a year to do a professional degree in Spain. But
Oh,
after coming back from Spain, I always wanted to do Peace Corps. That's what I wanted to do. But I was told that I didn't know this at the time. You have to be a U.S. citizen to be a Peace Corps volunteer, and I wasn't at that time. And so I was told, you can do AmeriCorps, which is volunteering for a year, but in the US. And you have to, you don't have to be a citizen to do AmeriCorps. And so I applied for AmeriCorps. And at this time, they actually had a specific program called Citizenship AmeriCorps,
oh,
where you get to work with the immigrant community, basically helping them learn English skills, teaching them civic classes for those who were ready to become U.S. citizens and go through that process. And so my first job, I was accepted into the program with AmeriCorps, was working with the San Luis Valley Immigrant Resource Center in this small little town in the middle of nowhere in Colorado. And so I signed up. I was like, I get to be a volunteer. So it's, not a official full-time, it's a full-time job because you're working the 40 hours. But I felt like it was a good segue from coming from undergrad, going into the real world. And so I did that for a year. And so I was working with farm workers who were, I was teaching them English and American government and US history. And they were actually teaching me how to drive. Yeah.
Does a program like that still exist through AmeriCorps?
You would have to, I know it was discontinued a few years after I finished.
Okay.
But I do know that new programs come on board all the time, right, with AmeriCorps. And so it's just a matter of looking at the different types of AmeriCorps programs they have. I was lucky that this was offered right when I was coming out of undergrad. And so I did that for a year, and then I came back to Los Angeles.
And what next? What did you do after that?
I remember I came back during the summer, and I was freaking out because I had student loans. I needed to find a job, and I think I panicked, and I took one job that I wasn't really excited about, but I was like, it's a job and it's going to pay the bills. It was doing like grassroots campaigning. It was fundraising money for, I think at that point it was for the Democratic National Committee. And I lasted 1 week because it just wasn't meant for me, and I remember I was sent to Third Street Promenade, to ask people for money. And this homeless man came up to me and looked me in the eyes and said, "Honey, this is not the job for you. There's something out there that is meant for you. Go find it."
Wow.
And I was like, if you can tell that I'm just not, this is not for me. And so I quit that day. I was like, I'm going to look and find a job that I know I'm going to like, and it's going to be, it's meant for me. And so I applied for different jobs. I went to different interviews. And then I was lucky that I interviewed for this nonprofit. They do faith-based organizing throughout LA mostly. And they were looking for an organizer in the West LA area. And I was like, I live in West LA. I'm familiar with the area. I went to Santa Monica College. And so I went to their event. I interviewed with them. I felt like this is something I can do. It's, community organizing, working with local communities to work on different issues. And so I was lucky that I was hired by them. So this was my first job. And I actually lasted with them for about 3 years until I decided that I wanted to go back to school.
Can I stop you real quick? You mentioned in that job that you got, you were desperate. It was summer. You knew that you needed to pay the bills. So you picked up this job to raise money for the Democratic National Convention, and then decided, after this interaction with a homeless man, that this is not for me. What advice can you give for students who might be in that situation soon, who are really feeling like, oh my gosh, I need to have a position, I'll just take whatever it is, and then they're unhappy? Mm-hmm. What can you say to that?
I mean, I think going back, I knew going into the job that it wasn't, fundraising, asking for money, that was not something I envisioned myself doing. I wanted to work more directly with communities in some capacity. And so I knew that this was not a job I wanted going in. I think knowing that and then being on the job, trying to make it work, but it just wasn't working. And I knew that it was just training because I was brought in to be a supervisor. So they were like, you're not going to be out there doing this.
Yeah.
But we want you to get the experience. But part of me was like, how am I going to be able to supervise people who are doing this work and I myself don't enjoy it, etc. And so I was like, it's just not for me. And I think part of me was like, yes, I need money and, I'm running out of savings. But I also wanted to be at a job that I felt comfortable in, and that I knew that I want to be here. I like what I'm doing, and I see myself staying here for a while. Because you can do short-term jobs if they're short-term positions, right? But if it's something that I want to be invested in, then I want it to be worthwhile. So I would say, it's sometimes we stress out. I was lucky that I was able to save, money so that I knew how many months I can go without income, right? Before I started really panicking. And so I was like, I'll just take the time and find a job that I really want to do. And I know I'm going to stay around.
So it sounds like you felt safe and comfortable to say, what, I'm not that necessarily you made a mistake, but that this was not right for me. And it's okay to say that was not the choice for me. Let's try again.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially your first jobs. It's always okay to say, I tried it, it's not working out, and then you look elsewhere. And it's better for you and it's better for them, right? Because they want people who are excited and motivated to be there. So
yeah,
it's a win-win for both, I think.
Thank you. Just get into a couple more questions. So you've described some of the work that you do. What kind of impact in some of those positions did you have on immigrant communities, or what level? You said you really liked working with people and really that side of the position. What kind of impact did you make? What kind of interactions did you have? And how did it make you feel?
So all my jobs have been out of undergrad have been with nonprofits. So I knew coming into the work that that's what I wanted to do. I worked with nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations. And so I'm not sure who pointed me in that direction, but, and it's still there out there today. They told me about this website, idealist.org. And that's where you can find internships, volunteer work, but you will also find work. Mm-hmm. And so every work I've had, I found through Idealist because I knew that's the type of work I'm looking for. And, it lets you search by if you're into education or housing. And so it allowed me to select specific areas I wanted to work in. So all my work as a community organizer, most of the communities, even though I was hired to do West LA organizing, I actually ended up organizing all over Los Angeles. So some of my religious congregations were in East LA, South LA, Venice, mid-city Los Angeles. So I was all over LA, and so I got to work with a very diverse population. One of the big campaigns we worked on when I was still working with LA Voice PICO was immigration reform. And we actually had a huge drive on citizenship work where we helped communities who we knew were eligible, right? Residents who were eligible to become citizens, then we helped them through the process. And so we partner with community colleges to provide free ESL classes so they could learn English. We partnered with them so that we could provide, civic classes and U.S. history classes so that they can be ready for their citizenship applications. And we worked with, pro bono immigrant lawyers to help them out. We held numerous citizenship drives where we helped actually with the application process. And so that was a lot of work that I did, but it was rewarding because we knew we were helping hundreds and hundreds of people become citizens. And then the next step for us as community organizers was how do we get them to be involved in their communities and try to solve the local issues that they want to work on, right? So in some of my communities, we were working on gang violence and youth programs, right? And so we would work with community residents and local elected officials and try to improve those resources. And so, most of my work doing community organizing was working in some way directly with community residents and also learning, right, about those communities through them because they're the ones who go out and talk to their neighbors and then they come back and meet in meetings, right, and we all share that information. And so I think in everywhere I've gone, I've worked with communities, with immigrant communities, and in my research, I do research in those communities, right, where not a lot of people go in, and part of actually my research and the reason why I wanted to come back and do research, because I couldn't understand some of them, right? I couldn't understand what was going on in those local communities. And so, and reading, political science, I was like, it's not actually helping me understand them as well. And so that's my research project came out of my direct experience working in those communities.
Thank you. You mentioned your position as community organizer. You've had a couple other job titles. How did you even know these existed? I feel like a lot of our students don't necessarily know what's out there and maybe feel like they need a graduate degree in order to get involved, especially a law degree. But it sounds like you were very successful without having those degrees. Of course, now you're getting a PhD, but prior to that, how did you know these existed, or was it a matter of you looking on Idealist and seeing what caught your eye?
Yeah, so one of the things I always make sure is you read the job description. You always read the job description. Yes. Because you might not understand the title for a job post, but then if you read it and you're like, oh, I can do this, or that's something I really want to do. And so I would always read the job description in detail, and then I would go to the organization's website, right? And then I'll do my research and read about them, what they do, what it is that they want to do. And then if I felt like this is, it's a good match, I can help them, right, in the work that they're doing, and I can actually learn from what they're doing, then that's when I would apply. Because even if sometimes you have jobs where you might think, I don't have the experience, right? They might say in their job description, ideally we want someone with experience. It doesn't mean you can't apply. You can still apply, and you never know. You might get a call back, and you might actually use volunteer experience, even though you don't have paid experience. But if you've done work on campus through a volunteer organization, that counts as experience, right? And so you always have to try to see, do they help me grow, but also can I help them, right, in the type of work they're trying to do? Can I actually do this job? And so for me, it was just reading the job description, and visiting their website and figuring out, am I able to do this job and can I do it? And so, again, doing that research helped me probably find the work that I wanted to do, right?
You are making this career counselor proud because you've said everything that I would say. And so it's nice to hear a professional who also lived that life. Yes, job descriptions can be misleading from the title. It can sound really boring, or it can sound really difficult, or it can sound really exciting. And then when you read the job description, then you get the true sense of what it is.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned, if you can do most of the job and there's a little bit room for growth, apply. So thank you for saying that. So I know you're doing research now into immigrant communities. What are some areas that you feel like students could really participate in, or what are some needs out there?
There's definitely what I've noticed now that I'm back, doing field work, and obviously more present in those communities, because I've always stayed in touch and support them. But there's always room definitely for community organizing, right? And there's different, some people are doing organizing just around housing, and there's, especially in places like, in big cities, housing, we do have a housing crisis. And so sometimes it's very specific organizing, right? Sometimes it's education, right? Education reform. And so I've noticed that these are the people who are working directly with immigrant communities, right? So it could be through the school, it could be through, housing needs, it could be through immigration. So many different organizations out there that do specific work and target specific areas to work with immigrant communities. But even, I had a former student who's teaching in one of the local schools in South LA right now, right? She gets to work with students, but, she also gets to work with immigrant students and helping them, connect with, college advising, right? And serving as a role model. She is from that community. And so she's able to go back and let them know that, hey, it's possible. So even though, she might not be working directly on immigration issues, but she's working in those communities, right, where they can see her as a role model, and she's able to connect with parents, right, and talk to them, if they speak Spanish, she's able to communicate with them. So sometimes we think we have to go, we have to be an immigration attorney, right, to make the difference or something like that. But even if you end up working as a teacher, right, you're going to be working, depending on the communities you go into, you're going to be doing a lot of that work, and a lot of sharing knowledge and education with parents, with students, so that they don't have to go through maybe some of the same roadblocks we've gone through, right, because we've been there, and so we can assist them. And so I think anywhere you end up working, if you have an immigrant community, which in California you're bound to find one, but even in other places, you are going to be providing a service, right? So don't feel like, if I'm not working directly with a nonprofit or with an organization that deals directly with immigrants, I'm not making an impact. You are, right? You're just doing it in other ways.
Thank you. What was your college major? You mentioned your college majors, international relations and Spanish.
Yeah.
And so how do those relate to what you're doing now? Do they need to relate to what you're doing now? And also, what are some experiences that you had in college that kind of helped you prepare for where you are now?
So, I was really involved in, while I was in undergrad, with different clubs on campus. Most of them, either something like the Latin American Student Association or something of that sort. I think, again, going into undergrad, I really thought, I envisioned myself working for like the United Nations. I wanted to bring world peace. That's something that I envisioned myself doing. And I think taking a break between, my undergrad and now my graduate degree really helped me a lot, because, taking the time to be out in the work field, it was doing community organizing, very local work, that I realized that, I don't need to go abroad to make a difference. There's a lot of need happening around me. Everywhere I go, there's a need. And so I figure that, if I don't need to, save the world, when I can just stay here in my local community and try to make a difference. And so I think it definitely opened my eyes, right? Because I was thinking international, and I'm, going to go abroad and make a big difference. But I figure that, a lot of the issues that I wanted to work on were happening next door, right? In my neighborhoods, et cetera. And so I think that, the background that I have definitely has helped me, right? Especially now as a graduate student, my undergrad definitely helped me. The fact that I was able to polish my Spanish as an undergrad definitely helped me, because, all my jobs have required Spanish skills, right? And it definitely helps me even now in my research, right? Most of my research in those communities is in Spanish. And so it's definitely helping me connect more with the communities I study. And so it definitely helps, but I think it's sort of like the stepping stone. Your undergrad, it's definitely going to help you, but you're just going to grow from now, and you're just going to learn, and you're going to continue to learn, while you go into the workforce, and it's just growing. So it definitely helped, the skills I learned. But, I started with international studies, and I'm now doing, Latino politics. And so it's not, connected directly, but I definitely have more knowledge, right? I can talk about local politics, but I can also talk about, international politics, because I still follow that. But it's definitely a stepping stone, I would tell students.
You mentioned, some having an undergraduate degree and being successful in this. I know a lot of students still are interested in getting graduate degrees, and you're getting your PhD and studying here at UCSB. What are some other graduate degrees that you know that people also have where you can support immigrant communities?
Oh, I mean, we have people who are doing education, right? People who are getting their PhD in psychology, right? And they're focusing on research that looks at immigrant communities, sociology. You can definitely study immigration from different aspects, right? Anthropology.
What about at the master's level as well?
Oh yeah, public policy, right? And the same thing, you can do a master's in political science and sociology and and counseling, etc. You can definitely use most of college degrees, right? And apply it and be helpful in the immigrant community.
Thank you. You mentioned your bilingual skills being a really great asset to some of the work that you do. What are some other skills that you've noticed that you inherently have or have developed over time that our students could benefit from hearing that they could contribute to now?
I think for me, something that I learned through the organizing and actually working also for School on Wheels. And School on Wheels provides tutoring services to homeless students. And one of the skills we always tell our tutors, it's like the number one skills they can utilize when working with students is listening. And actually mastering the way you listen to people, because, especially nowadays with technology and you're always on your phone and there's so many distractions going on, what it means for people to actually feel, for them to feel that you're actually paying attention, you're actually listening to them, right? And so I think that's something that I've definitely gotten better at. I'm still not perfect, but just, letting it all just sink in, right? And so in my research, I attend a lot of community meetings, and that's all I do, right? I just make observations and I listen. When I interview people, even when people are having side conversations, I'm listening, right? And actually paying attention to what they're saying, to how they're saying it. And so I think that's something that has helped me, right, in my research, but also in the work I do, right? When we're doing community organizing, you have to go out and listen to the communities you're working in. right? You're not coming in and say, you know what, I see that there's a lot of gang activity and we're going to work on gang issues, right? That's not how it works. It's going out, talking to residents and listening to them and what they say. This is what we want to work on, right? These are the needs of our communities. And that's how we learn about their communities and what they want. And so I think I know that at UCSB, right, when you're sitting in a lecture hall, you're training yourself, right, to listen to the professor and to take notes, detailed notes that are going to help you. So we're definitely, learning that. Even though students might not think of it, you're learning, right, that process of sitting in a lecture hall, listening, and right, trying to learn as much as you can. And so they're going to continue to do that wherever they go, right? And it's trying to listen as much as you can, and then letting whatever you're listening to build, and allow you to do the work that you want to do.
That's beautiful advice. Thank you. We just have a couple more minutes before we wrap up here. What advice do you have for current college students who want to learn more about where their niche is in working with immigrant communities and really supporting them in the best way that's appropriate for that student, so they don't fall into the position that you had where you're like, I accepted a job, but it wasn't right for me?
Right.
How do they find that out?
It's follow, I would say is we already know what we like, right? And what we enjoy. And so I see this, we can see that on campus. Think about, if you join specific clubs, right? It gives you an idea of what type of work you want to do. So for example, if you're really into union work, right, you've been involved on campus with unions, or you supported a lot of the union work, that's, you can go into union organizing. And sometimes specifically, right, they have some campaigns that target specifically immigrant workers, or campaigns where we know the immigrant community works in, right? And so it's, where do you see your passion, right? Is it housing? Is it education? Where do you see yourself? This is what I'm really passionate about. And hopefully by the end of your senior year, you have an idea, right, where those areas are. And so that's where you want to focus, right? Whether or not it ends up being what you end up doing is a different story, but at least it gives you an idea. This is what I'm interested in, and and this is what I want to work in. Because again, if you end up doing like me, you apply for a job that you're not really interested in, and you get it, you're probably not going to last there, right? You're going to be there maybe a couple of weeks, and then you're going to have to go and find something else. And so I would say is, in 4 years, what are the type of classes that you really enjoyed, right? That gives you an idea of, well, maybe I should pursue, this area because I really liked it. And I think for me, that's what helped me, right? Finding out, I knew coming out of undergrad, I wanted to work directly with communities, and communities of color. And so that definitely helped me, right, sort of craft my pathway. That has led me here, and I've been happy, right? I don't regret. It's taken me longer than maybe other people, but it's where I'm meant to be, and I'm doing the work I want to do. And so I have no regrets. And so I would say follow what you like, figure out what it is that you like, and you'll eventually find the job that's meant for you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. We have just a couple minutes left. Is there anything else that you want to add that I haven't asked or didn't know to ask, that you can pass along to students to make this process just a little bit easier for them?
It's very exciting. I know, and I've been getting questions in my classes as well, like, what do we do with political science? And I tell students, it's like, there's so many different jobs you can do with the many degrees that we have at UCSB. But it's finding, the work you want to do, right? And if you need time, like I said, if you need time to figure that out and you end up doing some part-time work, that's perfectly okay, right? While you figure out. And I definitely want to tell students that, getting a master's degree, going into law school, getting into a PhD, students don't know you don't need a master's to get into a PhD program. So if you already know that, you want to do research and you really enjoy it, and you want to teach at the college level, that's something, right, that's definitely available for students as well. But it's okay to be scared. And it's going to take a couple of months to figure it out. But I think eventually we all find the path, right? And we figure it out. And again, even if you make a mistake like I did at the beginning, you'll be right. You'll find eventually you'll find something that's gonna fulfill you. And again, you might be doing a job for 3 years or 5 years, and then you find yourself that, hey, you know what, I want to do something new. And that's how you grow, right? And you keep moving up or different types of jobs. So yeah, it's okay to be scared right now, but it'll be okay.
Good advice. Yanira, that's all I have for you today. And thank you for answering those questions so beautifully and really telling us your story.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.